Hey everybody, it's Phil back with another American Culture Studies discussion response. This week I'm staying mostly grounded in sort of the introduction in the culture theory book and also with the gender keywords. There was just so much there for me to try and unpack, and I have so many thoughts and questions about those things. I figured for the discussion response I'd start broad and save some more specific questions and discussion for in class. So the very first thing that popped out at me in the introduction is that cultural theory insists on a more complex understanding of identity, which demands that we think of this I according to larger social forces and political structures. So I'm getting the idea that we're not actually focusing particularly on these specific areas, disability, race, and gender. All of these are tied into a larger topic of identity, and that's where we're sort of going to be living for this week and for these topics. Looking at the gender keyword entry, a thing that stuck out to me a lot was the thought that there's a false universalization of male subjectivity. So, I'm interpreting that as the fact that we've used the word mankind to refer to everyone, right? So this false universalization of maleness on everything, and how potentially that might cause some issues or to alienate people or to prevent or to sort of put stressors onto culture and to progressiveness and growth. They mentioned the year 1990 as sort of the year of the onset of accepting performativity, enabling new modes of thinking. So performativity based on gender, right? So we're talking about instead of there being necessarily performances that are involved in performing certain aspects of socially constructed gender of male and female. And my question about this is, why are we focusing specifically on the performance aspect of this and not maybe a step further back, and why are people choosing to perform this way? Why were the performances generated in the first place? I also found it super fascinating to read about the differences between the drag queens and drag kings. Never been very familiar or presented with drag kings, but to think that drag queens are taken as more of like a humorous caricature and are campy, so to speak, and that drag kings are a more literal, sort of sincere approach to playing a different gender role. And also this idea of the cyborg imaginary suggesting a way out of the maze of dualisms in which we have explained our bodies and tools ourselves. I found it very fascinating that they use the word maze of dualisms. I would argue that dualisms are not so much maze-like and are a little bit maybe too defined, and that maybe a sea of identity is actually more of a maze than that. Be interested to hear what everybody else thinks. Okay, moving on to disability keyword. Disability as a cultural imaginary, I thought was, how could that be? How could disability not really be a thing? How could it be this sort of perception, not something rooted in reality? The disabled have been extremely institutionalized. Was this on purpose? And sort of the idea of out of sight, out of mind. So we're talking historically, disabled people were othered, and then maybe we're dependent upon medical attention or assistance in learning or something like that. And so they've been institutionalized. But was this really an intentional, sort of we're doing this to segregate or to really other you, or is this a sincere method of helping? Okay, the development of American Sign Language helped create a minority and not so much, not identify people that needed a language like that as an impairment. So I thought that was sort of like a landmark in sort of breaking down barriers between disability being just like a physical problem or something, or again, othering a group of people, but creating them as a smaller subgroup and not so much as just like people that belong to one group but are somehow impaired. And finally, on race, we are setting the terms of belonging and exclusion from institutions. It was interesting to read that in terms of what race you are, that this is how we categorize from the institutional level, like what your role is, where you belong, how you're supposed to behave. Race within genealogy of morality must address gender and sexual itineraries of conservative and liberatory policies. So we're connecting the political ideologies with gender and sexual itineraries, but within the genealogy of morality. So this is one of those times where it's like, well, we have a definition of something, but if we change the definition of morality, then we can think about something else differently. I'm not sure I understand why we overthink something to create a new way of thinking just to explore something in a different way. It feels like we're avoiding the original definition of a word. So much there to unpack. I'm not sure if I'm even making sense with laying it out there, but I think just talking about it is going to help me work through things in a little bit more of a detailed way in class. So thanks for listening. See you soon.